Well, good morning. Welcome back to another episode. It feels like an episode today of the 126 Collective. And I'll tell you, we've been studying some pretty incredible people that are historical figures that have a lot to teach us, I think, about leadership. And that's sort of my passion right now. And I think, just across the board with my clients, I calculated this morning that like 8 of my clients are in the process of hiring someone right now, whether it's a virtual person or an actual, person to help them on the administrative or operational side of their business, or even salespeople. And so it's a lot. It's a lot. If you've been around me at all, I'm passionate about the DISC. And as a DISC consultant, I'm able to use that tool extensively to help my clients, find the right person for the job. But leadership is tough. In fact, most people will never step into the role of leader. It's pretty scary. John Maxwell says that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so today we're going to be talking about what I think is one of the best negative case studies in history in terms of leadership, and that's our buddy Samson. So if I ask for a show of hands, who's ever heard of Samson and Delilah? I know every hand would go up, right? Whether you know anything about scripture or find yourself in a church setting or not, we've all heard of Samson and Delilah. And we all think we know the story. And hopefully I'll be able to add to that today, because often, we're only going to get a piece of it. But the story of Samson covers quite a few chapters in the book of Judges. And I say, if you are up for it, go in and read Judges chapters 13 through 16, and you'll get a really full picture of Samson. So we're going to kind of touch on some of the highlights or lowlights, as it were, today in our session. So I'm calling this Strong Enough to Win, Weak Enough to Lose It All. And so I'm going to start with the law of solid ground. And this is one of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership from Dr. John C. Maxwell. And the law of solid ground says trust is the foundation of leadership. So think about it. You could think about it in your family. You could think about it in any business or job you've ever had. You could think about it in your faith community or your kids' softball or baseball team, club sports, local government, state government, national. You could go across the board. And I bet if you ever wondered about a leader that you thought was a terrible leader, part of it would be because you didn't trust them. You didn't have trust in them. And I think the opposite would also be true. If there was someone that you thought was an incredible leader, my guess is you had a lot of trust in them. You had a lot of trust in them. And so John Maxwell also says that when people meet us, they are subconsciously asking themselves 3 questions. Do you like me? Right? Do you care about me? And can I trust you? Can I trust you? And so I think we all understand that trust does have to be a foundational part of leadership. So without it, you can't influence other people, right? We talk about control, and certainly most of the people that are going to be attracted to this course are business people, right? That's who I'm in contact with on a daily basis. And they want to find ways to control the environment, control their outcomes, control their circumstances. At very best, Tony Robbins says, you can influence other people. But if they can't trust you, you can't even do that. So you can forget it. All bets are off. So while leadership is built on trust, I think you would agree with me that trust is built on character, right? It's character. It's some of those things that are difficult to define. Oftentimes, we can't really tell you what character is or what integrity is until we see an example of when it's not. Like, it's hard to define the word integrity. I remember reading a book, was it Dr. Henry Cloud, I think, maybe wrote the book called Integrity. And integrity is a really difficult thing to define, but most of us know, we know how to describe what it isn't, because we know people when they're out of integrity. We know people when their character is off, right? So this is what we're going to talk about with Samson. So maybe in your own life, you know someone that, man, they were super talented, strong, gifted. They had whatever. They had an it factor, but you knew they were going to come crashing down. You knew it. Does anybody raise of hands there? Have you seen examples? You're like, man, that person could go places, but based on their behavior, they are gonna come crashing down. It's just a matter of when, right? So Samson wasn't weak. We all know that. He's known for his big muscles, right? He was incredibly strong. We think about his muscles and his hair. Does anybody over the age of 50 think of like a Fabio, right? That's what I always think of when I think maybe a modern day version would be Jason Momoa. Like that's the Samson, like big, muscle guy with this incredible locks of hair. So he certainly wasn't weak. He was strong, but he didn't have the character to carry his calling. That was Samson's downfall, right? So it's easy to look at Samson and say, well, obviously shame on Samson. Everybody knew what his weakness was. It was women, his ego, and the women, got in the way. And that's, I think, is too simplistic, because we could look at a character like that and say, well, I don't have that problem, like I'm not so ego bound, or I'm not so I'm not lusting after things that don't belong to me, so I'm not like Samson. But what I'll say is, for Samson, it didn't happen overnight. It was bit by bit by bit, and then all of a sudden. So, I think it would only be helpful to study Samson if we can look at him and say, where do I have some of these similar character traits? If they're there, we need to pluck them out. We need to get them out by the root, because they're the kind of thing that will kill any opportunity you might have. So I'm going to kind of be jumping around a little bit in our readings today, and I'll go ahead and share my screen in case you don't have the handout, so you can see where I'm going to start here. All right, I'm going to start in Judges chapter 13, verse 5. And it says, for behold, now this is an angel who's appeared to Samson's mother. We never get her name, by the way. I'm not sure why, but we don't get her name. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. So a little backstory here. Samson's a judge. If you were with us in our last session, we talked about Deborah. Deborah, a great example of a leader. But Samson has been called as a judge. Now, a little bit of behind the scenes here is that the Philistines have begun to exert dominance and oppression over the Israelites. So God is going to use Samson to overthrow the Philistines, if you will. And the Nazarite vow, you could not drink any alcohol. You had to stay ritually pure. You couldn't cut your hair. So these were people that sort of devoted themselves, body and soul, if you will, to their calling. And so Samson's mother couldn't even eat grapes. Like, you couldn't come near anything that could potentially ferment and become wine, right? And so he was to be dedicated to God from the womb. So I'll move on a little bit further in that chapter. And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. So talk about solid ground. I mean, Samson is dedicated from the womb. So the law of solid ground shows that trust is your leadership currency. It's your leadership currency. Without it, everything else is unstable. So just from this part of the story, we would be like, Samson's got it. I mean, talk about solid ground. He was dedicated from the womb. His parents raised him. They had been visited by an angel and told about this child that they would have, and that he would be strong. So those of you who are followers of the faith could kind of see this as a foreshadowing of later down the road, when another woman who has at that time, Samson's mother had been barren, and of course Mary was a different story. She was just a virgin, but was visited by an angel, and she had this son that would be strong and dedicated to God. So we can kind of see there's some parallels here. So that's our clue to say, what do we learn from Samson? So let's talk about the three pillars of trust: integrity, authenticity, and discipline. So I'm going to ask you some questions about you in a moment, but I want you to be thinking. When you think about leadership, I want you to think about leaders that you trust. I want you to think about leaders that you follow. And I want you to think about yourself as a leader, whether you're leading a business team, whether you don't have a team, you're leading your clients and maybe other people involved in the business transactions that you're conducting, whether you're leading in your family, or whether you do have a leadership position, maybe maybe it is in your kids' baseball club, or maybe it is in your church or your community. Maybe it's bigger than that. Where do you grade yourself in each of these things? We say that integrity is doing what's right even when no one's watching. It's the things that are happening when no one else is looking. Are we still doing what's right? We can each examine ourselves. And I wouldn't say even the answer is yes or no, but it's when have I done what's right even when no one's watching? Or when have I maybe cut the corner, cheated a little bit just because no one was watching? Authenticity, being real, not filtered. And I don't mean Instagram filtered. Believe me, that's not what I'm talking about. That is a form of filtering, but being authentic doesn't necessarily mean you're going on Instagram with no makeup. I have on makeup today. I'm not trying to be on this recorded for the till the end of time without trying to put myself, together a little bit. But authenticity, we know that's different, right? This is being authentic, being true to yourself, being real. It can be difficult. I work with a lot of people in the real estate industry. It can be such a challenge for people who are in such a competitive industry and who are always being compared or comparing themselves to other people. One of my clients also said earlier, I said, I want you to think of a real estate team that you think is run at a really high level with all these great systems. And so as they proceeded to sort of process my question, one of the partners said, you know what? All I really see is what they post. So I don't know what's really going on behind the scenes. I mean, right? You might think, wow, they look like they've got it all together. I'm talking about being authentic. Where are you authentic? Next is discipline, the ability to govern yourself. Right? We all have to have a certain measure of self-discipline really to do anything in life. If you got up and went to work today, you have some measure of discipline. There are lots of people who don't have it and they didn't. So these are the pillars of trust. If you're going to be a leader that other people trust, you must do the right thing, even when no one's watching. You must be authentic. You must be authentic. You got to be real. And you've got to be able to govern yourself. How could you expect the people on your team to not have these three pillars if you're not exhibiting them? So let's move on and let's talk about where Samson started. Since we're talking about the law of solid ground, Samson was called by God before he was born. He was set apart as a Nazirite, and the Spirit of the Lord moved in him early, when he was a child, presumably, right? So he started with more solid ground than most leaders ever get. And the truth is that you may have incredible gifting, talent, and opportunity, but none of that replaces the need for your daily character decisions. Your daily character decisions. So what are the decisions you're making on a daily basis to ensure that you're staying true to what you've been given? I go back to our very second session this year. If you didn't catch it, I would definitely encourage you to go back the first two of the sessions that I did in this series. The second was on the parable of the talents. And so all of us have been given some measure of gifting and talent, right? We all are going to create opportunities and find ourselves in opportunities. It's those daily decisions we make relative to character that make all the difference in the world. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you to think for a moment here. Where is your leadership the strongest right now? Just think about that and maybe jot something down. Again, I don't care how many people you're leading, and I don't care in what capacity. Where do you feel like your strengths are right now? And secondarily, where is your foundation weakest? You guys have heard me say this before. John Maxwell says God's gift to us is our potential, and our gift to God is realizing that potential. Right? Back to the parable of the talents. We all have different levels of gifting, different levels of potential. Where are we stepping into that on a regular basis? So this is not about beating ourselves up. It's just like we need to constantly, I think, check in and get a baseline, right? We have to be able to celebrate, where am I doing well? Like, where am I meeting that potential? Where am I excelling? Where am I building trust? Where am I creating more influence? And then what are my weak points? What are my weak points? Being aware of them allows us to make different choices, right? Choice is a function of awareness. All right. So let's see where the erosion begins with Samson. So I'm going to jump ahead to chapter 14 of the book of Judges. Samson has decided that he wants a Philistine woman for a wife. Now, you may remember from the story of David, King David. Well, we haven't gotten to him yet, but you may have heard his story. There's some great media out right now that I think has done a phenomenal job. There's a kids movie called David, and they do a really wonderful job of telling the story in an entertaining way for kids and adults. And then House of David, which is a series that has 2 seasons so far on Amazon Prime. You know, they're taking some more literary liberty with it to be able to flesh out the story, but you can learn a lot about David. One thing you might remember is that Goliath was a Philistine. These people are giants, like literally and figuratively. They're a large military power. The Israelites were not supposed to be messing around with Philistine women. But in Judges chapter 14, Samson said to his father, "Get her for me. She is right in my eyes." We got a couple of problems here. He says, "Get her for me." Not exactly the way most women want to be wooed, right? Not exactly the way that God designed for people to end up in a marriage, but get her for me. And the second problem is, she is right in my eyes, in my eyes. Now, this is someone who was dedicated to God before birth, and yet he is going to demand something that is right in his eyes. We don't see any indication that he might have gone and prayed about it, but that's our first problem. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit. After some days, he returned to take her. To take her. Very important words. So Samson's father goes. They make arrangements to, quote, get her. And Samson goes back to take her. Now, on the way there, the first time, he had seen a lion and was gifted with the strength to be able to destroy this lion with his bare hands. He basically ripped it apart and it died. Now, if you don't know anything about the Nazirite vow, you're going to learn a little something right now. They're not allowed to touch dead stuff. Can't touch any dead stuff. Well, he just killed something, so it's dead. So he's touched it. Now he's unclean. So as he's coming back to take her, he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. He scraped it out into his hands and went on eating as he went. So we got all kinds of problems. You can see Samson is starting to lose it, right? He's killing the animal. It doesn't even suggest, I think, in the story that it was self-defense. He kills the animal, but sometimes later he goes back, he sees the carcass, aka it's dead, and then he scoops his hand in there and eats it. Like, he's going all kinds of wrong ways, little by little by little. A few verses later, and Samson said to them, these are the guys in the town, the wedding party for the men, "Let me put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes." So Samson is he's gambling, like, he's making bets. He's taking women that are foreign, that were forbidden to him. He's touching dead things like this. You can see what's happening. Now he's still the leader. He's still a judge in Israel. So he's still a military commander. But we can see that his level of compromise is starting to compound, right? So let's think about ourselves. Again, easy to look at Samson and say, well, I'm not like Samson. But I would ask us to consider individually, like, where might there be patterns of repeated poor decisions? And maybe it's not now. Maybe you can think of a past business failure or relationship failure or leadership failure where you're like, man, it fell apart because little by little, I started making decisions that weren't going to take me where I wanted to go. Right? Does that make sense? It happens. What's the saying? You go bankrupt one day at a time, and then all of a sudden you get a divorce one day at a time, and then all of a sudden, right? This is how it happens. So where in the past or maybe currently am I making some poor decisions that may be compounding and compromising my ability to lead and influence the people I'm called to lead and influence? What about ignoring red flags? We're going to talk about that because, as I mentioned, so many of my clients are in the process of hiring talent. And those of you who've done it, you know it. There were red flags, and you wanted it to work so bad, or you needed it to work so bad, or you were trying to relieve the pressure of you having so much to do. You needed it so bad that you ignored some red flags. Some of us have married people that we ignored a lot of red flags. I mean, I don't want to be the only hand going up there, but I won't ask you to raise your hands on that one. We ignored the red flags. Okay. And then justifying behavior that we once resisted. So it's just a moment to just reflect. Is there any area now, or has it happened in the past? Or am I following someone right now? Right? Because we're all leading, hopefully, and being led. John Maxwell says everyone deserves to be led well. Some of us have found ourselves, as I was working on this lesson, I could not help but think of a person that I worked for when I was in corporate America back in New Orleans. And this person, there were repeated poor decisions. There were a million red flags. And I saw this person decline from a man that I thought was a strong leader, powerful family man, active in the community. And I started to watch him decline, and his crash was massive. Luckily for me, I got out before it went completely sideways. But I got to be honest, the only reason that happened is because Hurricane Katrina came and relocated our company. But I could think back to this person, and I watched. I could have seen it all coming. I'm not saying that there's anything I could have done about it, but definitely he is a negative case study on leadership. So I want to ask myself, does any of this ever show up for me? So just for reflection, and maybe you jot down a couple of notes here. Where am I compromising in small ways? In small ways. Again, a lot of my clients are in the real estate world, and the market may have shifted some. Maybe you're not having the same level of success that you might have had a couple of years ago. There's a lot of external factors that play into this, but perhaps, did I skip a page? Nope, I think I'm right. But it can be tempting to kind of maybe compromise here or there to get a deal done. So it's just asking, am I making a compromise? Am I doing business with clients that I don't line up with? Am I working with people that I don't line up with? And what patterns am I ignoring? So let's talk about Samson and how it all starts to really break down. So leaders don't fall apart overnight. They erode over time, right? A strong leader is self-disciplined. And so with Samson, his lust began to override his judgment. And he began to compromise his convictions. And then, of course, we know he was extremely arrogant and engaged in a lot of risky behavior. This was a pattern. So let's see what happens now when Samson's ultimate leadership fail comes in the form of a woman. And we all know who she is. Her name is Delilah. And so I'm going to jump ahead in Judges chapter 16, verse 6. So Samson, he's made the riddle, by the way. Let me finish that little bit of the story. He's created the riddle. His wife at the time, the one he went and took, which we don't get her name either, but the 30 men, the guys that were in the wedding party that were trying to get Samson, that Samson told the riddle to, they were trying to get the answer to the riddle. They threatened the woman and told her that they would burn her and her father and the entire household, burn them alive. So she eventually gets the answer from Samson. That results in him massacring 30 people because he's wagered 30 sets of clothing. So how does he get it? He murders 30 people and takes their clothes. So Samson is really falling apart. Fast forward now, he's had other women, prostitutes and the like, and now he's found Delilah. And so Delilah has been bribed with, I think, like 1,000 shekels or some kind of large amount of money. I thought I wrote it down, but I didn't. If she can figure out the source of his strength. These are the Philistines, remember, they want to get rid of Samson. And so Delilah says to Samson, please tell me where your strength lies and how you might be bound that one could subdue you. Now, this goes on like 7 times. She keeps going back, excuse me, 3 times. He keeps telling her lies about how he can be subdued. And every time she then sets him up, whether it's with cords, whether it's braiding his hair into a loom, whatever the methods are that he tells her, he lies to her and tells her how his strength can be subdued. And each time she sets him up and says, the Philistines are here. And each time he breaks through the bonds of however they've bound him, right? And so you would think the guy at this point would have figured out that she's setting him up. But this is how arrogant he has become. So finally, she says to him, how can you say I love you when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and you have not told me where your great strength lies. So she's repeatedly tried to betray him, and he knows it, but he stayed with her. He wasn't tricked. He was tricked multiple times by the same woman. So here's the truth. A lack of self-discipline will eventually override your gifting. A lack of self-discipline will begin to override your gifting. So this is, from a business perspective, this is the wrong hire that you knew was wrong from the beginning, the partnership you rushed into, the boundary you refuse to enforce. That's your Delilah. That's your Delilah. We all have a Delilah, right? Because if you read the story, and I do encourage you to go back and read, even if you just read chapter 16, which is about the 2 of them. We don't hear that she is of some great beauty or she's some powerful or smart. We don't hear any of those things. She's just yet another wrong woman that Samson has chosen to take as his wife. And she repeatedly tries to trick him. And yet you would think, like, how does he not see this? You'd have to be a real moron to not see what she was doing there. But his arrogance, his ego had grown to such a degree that he truly believed that no matter what happened, God would give him the strength to break through any barriers. So let's let that sink in for a minute. Because some of us are gifted, we are talented, we do have some great skills and abilities. And we've probably pulled ourselves out of the out of the pile multiple times. You ever feel like maybe you've had a season where you just, no matter what you did, you came out smelling like a rose? Maybe you felt like it was luck. Maybe you felt like it was just your time. Maybe you did start to feel a little like you were Teflon, like you had some sort of superhuman power. And then you got used to it, right? Some of us are recovering procrastinators. I was a procrastinator for a long time. I wouldn't have told you that. I would have told you that I work best under pressure. And I had a coach years ago who, after hearing me talk about this working best under pressure, finally let me know, you're just a procrastinator. And I was like, that's not true. Like, I don't wait till the last minute because I'm afraid of doing it wrong or whatever the reason she was offering me to consider. I said, that's when I work best, like down to the wire. I'm up till midnight. Like I'm burning the candle at both ends. And this person helped me to understand that really I was just procrastinating. And you know what? The worst part was I did always come out on top. It did always work out. I did it in college. I wrote every paper the day before it was due. I got straight A's. So I really kind of began to believe a lie about myself. Truth was, I was procrastinating. Why? Because at some level, I was afraid that I really wasn't smart enough. I really wasn't good enough. But if I waited until the very end and just put everything I had into it, I could pull it out at the very end. So that was my Delilah. It was wrong. And it took me a long time to understand that. So I don't know what yours is. I don't know what yours is. Unfortunately, mine was costing me in terms of true depth, but on the surface, it was working. So figure out what your Delilah is. I put some verses here at the end of each page that may help you kind of, reflect on and think about some of these things. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 27, it says, "The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it." Right? So are we looking out for what could get in the way? There's another verse in Proverbs that I didn't include, but it said, "As a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool returns to his folly." So I thought that was a little bit graphic for a handout. But anyway, so what are the patterns that we're ignoring? What are the, what is our breaking point? So let's see what Samson's breaking point is. So we know that Delilah she's out to get him. And he says in chapter 16, verse 17, "A razor has never come upon my head, for I've been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man." And so she does it. He falls asleep, she shaves his head. 3 verses later, she says, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." Again, like this is the 4th time. "And he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as at other times and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him." He didn't even know. And so the very next verse says, "And the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles." So that's over. It's over for Samson at this point. At least we think, right? At least we think. So the truth is that unaddressed compromise leads to collapse. The moment that Samson revealed the source of his strength, God left him, and he didn't even know it. So all that solid ground that he had, being selected from before his birth, being chosen by an angel of God, being dedicated to God, never cutting his hair, never consuming alcohol. We can only imagine what would happen if Samson had started drinking, but all of the things. But slowly but surely, he begins to compromise, and he begins to lean on his own understanding and not trust the one who should have been leading him. And so what happens? He gets taken to Gaza, and he's bound with bronze shackles, and he's forced to tread grain in the mill. And he's blind. He has no eyeballs. They've gouged his eyes out. They did some really cruel things back in the day. But that's what happens when solid ground collapses. Your strength is gone, your sight is gone, your freedom is gone, and your influence is gone. So I want to read this a little more metaphorically. You know, chances are you're not going to be captured and have your eyes gouged out. But you can imagine when your strength is gone, when you no longer feel strong enough to carry out your duties, when you can't even see anymore. Has anybody ever, I won't even ask for a show of hands, but I'll raise mine. Has anyone ever gone so far down the road of compromise that now you're just blind? You can't even see, you can't even see what you're doing. You've lost your freedom. And now you have none of those things. You have no influence. So we don't lose everything in a moment. We lose it long before it just becomes visible. That's when we all hear about it, right? So just like the guy I worked for in New Orleans, when he fell, it was a big crash. He was very high profile individual, and his failure was pretty epic, and newsworthy. But the truth is that those of us who knew him knew that he had lost it long before that. It just became visible to the rest of the world, and unfortunately his wife and kids and the company. So that company didn't exist anymore today, by the way. That's how big that fall was. And it was a large company. So if you have broken trust with others in life, we can work to restore it, right? This is like people that are in the recovery movement. They know that that's part of recovery. You got to own it. You got to own your garbage, and you got to go apologize. You got to make restitution where possible. Like if it's possible to make it better, you got to do that. And you got to make a commitment to rebuild. You got to make a commitment to rebuild. I think that most of us would agree that when we've seen a leader have a pretty public failure, but they own it, that's the first step, right? When they admit it and not look to blame someone else, when they own what they've done, when they apologize and they commit to doing better, don't we kind of have a lot of respect for those people that are willing to do that? You know, I said this to my spiritual advisor at my church. I said, if I had the choice between having a husband who never had to apologize because he never messed up, or having a husband who messes up but apologizes truthfully, you know, a real apology, like, I'm sorry, I was wrong, please forgive me. I'd take the second one, in all honesty. I'd rather have a spouse who makes mistakes, owns it fully, apologizes, and commits to making things better than one who never screws up to begin with. That's just the way I feel about it. And I think it happens sometimes with leaders. We want those people that are willing to admit when they've done something wrong and willing to do the work to make it better, right? This is, this is such an important part of growth as a leader. Because if you think that you're going to become a leader and never screw up and never break trust with your people and never compromise and never lose sight of your vision and never make mistakes, you will never be able to become a great leader. You won't be able to do it. In my opinion, there was only one who did it without failure. The rest of us are fully human. And that one was fully human, fully divine. So, I would much rather follow a leader who has made mistakes, because I can identify with a leader who makes mistakes. I can't identify with a perfect leader. I don't know any. I've never been one. But honestly, I can get behind a leader who screws up and owns it and apologizes, who makes restitution where possible, and who commits to rebuilding. So the reason why I want to hover on this is because I want you to think about that. If you think you're going to build a team or grow your own level of influence or your ability to lead and do it perfectly, you might as well quit now. You won't do it. So be the kind of leader you want to see, right? With your team, with your family, with your community, wherever you find yourself leading. So Samson never did this. That was the problem. He just never addressed his repeated failures and his compromises. But when you don't address compromise, it is going to collect interest, and the bill is always coming due. So I'm going to ask you to reflect for a moment and maybe jot down, is there any broken trust that you need to repair right now? In any area of your life. So we can stay on the business topic, or you can go into your personal life and ask, have I broken trust with anybody that I should have done a better job of leading? Whether it's, your children or your spouse or extended family or friendships. And then where do you need to take responsibility, maybe for your actions? So your greatest risk as a leader is not external, it's internal. We all know that. It's the demon within us that we got to fight, not the one out there. So let's look at Samson's fatal flaws. He misjudged people, he trusted the wrong people, and he was blinded by desire, literally and figuratively, right? So I'm just asking us to consider for ourselves right now, where are my blind spots? We got to be able to figure those out. I won a car back in 2016. I won a Ford Mustang, and it was a convertible, brand new. It was a pretty amazing car. But I'm telling you, I'd never driven a convertible as my regular car. When the top was up, it had terrible blind spots. Now I drive two convertibles, and they both have horrible blind spots. So ignoring them does not make them go away. Ignoring them could cause a crash. So we need to know what they are. I don't hate my car because it creates blind spots when the top is up. I just need to know what the blind spots are so I can make sure I know where I'm going on the road. And I know which mirrors to use, right? So what are you tolerating that you should be confronting? I'll tell you what, with a lot of my clients that end up hiring people as they grow their team, it's this tolerance of bad behavior or of inappropriate behavior or just lack of performance that doesn't get confronted that tends to be their biggest problem, right? They've seen the red flags. It's like we talked about earlier. The warning signs are there, but they need this person to work out. They need it to work because they've spent all this time and energy and money, time is money, hiring them, getting them trained, getting them in place, providing them with the tools, equipping them, and they need it to work. The reason why so many people, at least I know for sure in real estate, I've got almost 20 years in that world right now. The reason why it's so hard for real estate agents, for example, to start to build a team is because the time and energy it takes to hire the right people is beyond what they have. And so they wait until they're desperate, and then they take the first thing that comes along, or they have somebody that they really want them to work out. They really want it to work. And maybe they're a friend, and so they think they can make it work. And so when things start to get a little wonky, they don't want to rock the boat. And in part, it's because they're nice people. Salespeople tend to be nice people. They love people. And so they don't like confrontation. Remember, if you know anything about the DISC, 69% of people disc out as a high S. The S is the very steady, stable, sensitive status quo, right? Those are some good S words. The S likes things to stay the way they are. They do not want to confront anybody. They don't want to be confronted. So we just kind of sweep things under the rug because we need it to work. We don't want to go back to the beginning. We don't want to start over. We don't have time. And so we tolerate things that we should be confronting. Not because we're bad people or bad leaders. It's just because, you know, that's difficult to do. And then maybe for you, it is your desire that what you want to do overrides the discipline to do the things you need to do. Most of the people I work with are at some level are selling something. And in order to sell things, you got to be disciplined. You got to do certain activities and you got to do them every day. Anybody know about those activities? You got to do them every single day. And for most people, you know, they love helping people. They love people. But then when it comes time to reach out and connect with those people and do the business of selling those people, man, they can find a million other things they'd rather do. Their desire overrides their discipline. So, you know, maybe you're not lusting after, you know, after people and, you know, getting wound up in your in your sex life, but maybe for you, your desire for pleasure overrides the discipline to do the work that you need to do. That's hard to do.
Why do I feel like you're picking on me right now?
I'm
No,
not.
but seriously, I can relate to everything that was just said. Like I went through, I mean, you know, I went through that recently with our admin. We tolerated a lot because, you know, we've invested so much time training and all the things, and it just needed to work, had to work. And there were so many times where I would sit right in the seat that I'm in now because she was in a different office and know logically and internally that I needed to do something about it, but I would just go on to something else and avoid it because I'm like, I can't even deal with that right now.
Yeah.
I can't even
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. So it's easy. So no, I'm not
Yeah.
picking on you. What I'm saying is
No,
that,
I know.
you know, we all got a little Samson going on in
Uh-huh.
us, you know, from time to time.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy to look at a story like his and seeing it's very dramatic and there's, you know, murder and, you know, slaughtering humans and hooking up with prostitutes. And we think, well, that's not me. That story wouldn't be in the Bible if it didn't have a message, right? You know,
Right.
if it didn't have a message for those people then, obviously the Israelites, and if it didn't have a message for us now. And so we need to figure out what our Delilahs are and deal with them early on, right?
Yeah.
So, because the truth is, people don't see your intentions. They see your habits, they see your decisions, and they see your consistency, right? So, in order for each of us to lead at a higher level, we got to be willing to be visible. That goes back to that authenticity. That goes back to taking responsibility. Because we can have, has anybody ever had incredible intentions, but just didn't follow through or didn't turn out the way we wanted? I mean, we meant well. I think most people mean well. You know,
What's that saying? Like, great intentions are a highway to hell or something like that.
the
I've
road to
heard.
hell is paved with good
Yes.
intentions.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's that
yeah,
one.
yeah. So reflect for yourself, right? For a moment. What is your biggest blind spot right now? Maybe it is in your relationships. Maybe it's your ego. Some people just don't like to admit. I mean, I have a situation right now I'm trying to help with someone. They cannot admit their place in their problem. Their ego will not tolerate it. It will not tolerate it. So they're struggling. Maybe for you it is desire. You'd rather be doing a million other things. Maybe you just don't have the discipline. Maybe it's something else. But what is your biggest blind spot right now? And here's a great question. Who in your life tells you the truth? Does anybody tell you the truth in your life? You know? I mean, that's the best thing to me about coaching. I get to tell people the truth and they actually want to hear it, even though they don't always like to hear it. And you know, that's the great thing about having a coach. They can tell you the truth.
You and my wife are the two that will tell me the truth.
Okay, so let's figure out how do we get to restoration, right? How can things be restored for Samson? So in chapter 16, verse 28, Samson called to the Lord. Now remember, he's been captured. They gouged his eyes out. He is grinding grain. Well, now all the leaders, the wealthy elite in of the Philistines have come together and they're having a big feast. And they say, bring out Samson and let him perform for us. Let him perform for us. I looked and looked. I could not find anywhere that could help me understand what was he doing. Cartwheels, acrobats. I don't know what he was doing. Flexing. Who knows? Um, but so they bring Samson out. He's bound by chains, and he asked one of the guards that's holding him to let him rest his hand against the two pillars of the temple, the pagan temple. So Samson called to the Lord and said, "Oh Lord God, please remember me and please strengthen me only this once, oh God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my two eyes." So he wants revenge. And he said, "Let me die with the Philistines." Then he bowed with all his strength, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his life. So Samson has prayed one last time for God's favor. Now, he's only caring about his eyes. He wants revenge. They've gouged his eyes out. But remember, I said in the very beginning, God was going to use him against the Philistines. And he was a willing partner here. And as he presses against the pillars, the entire thing collapses, kills him and everybody in the place, thousands of people that day. So here's the paradox. God still accomplished his purpose, but Samson did not fulfill his potential as a leader. Isn't that crazy? So we could still achieve great things, but not achieve our potential. And I don't know about you. I had a great conversation with a friend this week that I don't know if it's my age. I don't really know if it's just coming into more clarity and alignment, but I am not interested in working with people who want to achieve great success and make a lot of money and get their name on the board, but don't want to achieve their potential. And I won't do it. I won't do it. I want my clients to get rich. I want them to make a lot of money. I want them to be successful, but I want them to achieve their potential. I want them to fulfill their potential as a person. And part of being a person is leading. And so, I really never have worked with people that are just all about the dollar and their ego. But I had an opportunity to, and I declined. So you don't have to be perfect, but we do have to all be honest about where we're compromised. So I'm going to challenge you today for your homework to really write this down. Okay. Write down one area of your life that you know you need to be more disciplined in. Like, I just need to strengthen it. You don't have to go from 0 to 100, but you can go from 0 to 5. In your personal area, where do you need more discipline? It could be in a relationship. It could be in the way you communicate with people. It could be in how late you're sleeping, or how late you're going to bed. You could want to get to bed earlier, get up earlier. Maybe you're going to put down the screen earlier. Maybe you're going to take a detox off of social media. I'm on a 6-year detox of social media, and I love it. I don't miss it at all. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's what you're eating or not, what you're drinking or not, like whatever it is. Just one area where you're like, I need a little more discipline in this area. And then from a relationship standpoint, what's one relationship? Again, it could be a relationship on your team, by the way. It could be with a business colleague, but it could be in your personal life. It could be your family, where you know that I just need a little more discipline. Just one area. And then in your professional life, in your business, what's one thing, one area that you need to discipline? Maybe it is getting into the office earlier. Maybe it is, making a few more phone calls, or finishing up a project that's been lingering, or working on a system that you've started and never accomplished. Maybe it is getting the right mindset to hire the right person. And who's one person that can hold you accountable? Insider tip, don't ask your spouse. They're generally terrible accountability partners, because they love to tell you when you screwed up. And not your best friend, because they're a terrible accountability partner, because they let you off the hook all the time. Find somebody else that doesn't necessarily have a stake in your success, who's willing to hold you accountable. So remember that your gifting might open doors, but only your character will keep them open. That's a fact, Jack. So your strength is a gift, but your character is your responsibility. In the final analysis in Judges chapter 16, verse 22, it says, "But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved." Like all was not lost. Why did he have ultimately the strength? If his strength was in his hair, and we know that was just the method that we use to communicate that. But even Samson, after all his failures, his hair grew back. His hair began to grow back. So where are you maybe being invited to rebuild something that you have neglected? It's never too late, right? It's never too late. Because ultimately we'll all get corrected by the consequences of our actions. It's coming. It's coming for all. It's coming for all of us. So I hope this has been helpful. What I really wanted to do was challenge our simplistic reading of stories like Samson's. And we all know it's how not to be, right? How not to be. Don't be egotistical. Don't think that you're all that in a bag of chips. Don't think you're doing everything on your own. Don't fall for the wrong people. Don't get beyond your skis, right? As people say. We all know those things. And so it can be easy to look out and look at other very public leaders that have fallen. I mean, you have only to turn on the television and every day somebody's going down. Somebody's going down. And I got to be honest, sometimes I'm ashamed at my own internal glee when certain people fall. I'm ashamed of that. And I confess that and ask for forgiveness for that. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, I would be horrified. Culture would encourage us to delight in the failure of the proud. And we're all, one haircut away, one haircut away from joining the rest of them. So I hope this has been some food for thought, that it challenges you. Go back and read the story of Samson. It's gory, it's bloody, it's got sex, it's got all the things. It's got all the things, but it's got some great lessons. And I appreciate everything that you guys bring showing up. And next time, I don't know who we're going to go with next time. I'm kind of cruising through the Old Testament and kind of taking this one step at a time, but I'll find us a good one. But in the meantime, let's all go out and don't be Samson. Have a great week, everybody.